So, hello everybody.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming. I would say hello in Bengali, however, I don't think I have that word. I know namaste, and I can say things in Hindi, but would somebody like to teach me how to say hello in Bengali? Namaskar. Okay, so namaskar, and but I guess I could say other things in Hindi, aapse milkar khushi hui, things like that. But I know that those are two different languages altogether, so I'll have to brush up on my Bengali, and you're welcome to teach me. But I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that we can have a good exchange about what our organization does. First of all, I'd like to start out, has anybody heard of POMI before? Raise your hand if you have heard of our organization. I know definitely one person. Okay, great. Hopefully those have been good experiences with POMI. But I'm here to tell you about what we do, why we do it. I'm here to answer your questions, and yeah, let's get started. First of all, I'd like everybody to take one of these packets that has information about our services. We'll be using this to kind of go through what I'll be talking about. So I'll ask you to hold off on using it. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay. Hold off on opening it till I start going through everything, because then we'll walk through all of the cards together. Otherwise, it kind of gets distracting and people are all over the place. So just take one and pass it on. I'll tell you a little bit about our history. Promis, which means promise in French, has been around for 30 years. And we were started by a group of nuns, actually, in the Côte-des-Neiges area 30 years ago. And their mission was to help people who were newly arrived to determine their own integration. To give them the tools to decide, how do I want to play a role in Montreal, in Quebec society. And so since that time, we have moved away from being run by nuns. We're completely non-religious. And our mission remains to help immigrants and refugees. Many organizations in Montreal are strictly for helping who the government tells them to help. But because we have this long history that was helping everybody who has come, not just a certain portion of the population, our doors are open to all of those that arrive. And if you walk through our doors, we're going to figure out a way to help you, whether that's by serving you on the spot or giving you a good referral and following up later. So that's important to us. So the other thing to know is that for 30 years, like 30 years ago, most people that were arriving here in Montreal came with some amount of French. But we're learning more and more that there are people, like all of us in this room right now, arriving with more English than with French. And so we've realized that there are many people who don't even realize our services are available to them because they think, oh, that's a French organization. However, our services are available to people who speak more English or more French. And that's why it's important. That's where I come in. I'm from the United States, so my mother tongue is English, and I speak French pretty well. But I was brought on to reach out to communities like yours, to reach out to organizations that work with people from countries that tend to speak more English than French when they arrive, and to find out what can we do to better serve communities like yours. So it might not necessarily be that you need our services, but maybe you know of somebody that needs our services or who could benefit from our services, and maybe you have ideas about how POMI could be better serving the Bengali community or the wider Indian community or the wider South Asian community or the wider Anglophone, primarily English-speaking community of Montreal. So it's kind of the idea is to figure out ways to work together to better serve those who are coming. I'll start really quick before we dive in here. I'll give you a little personal history of mine. I moved to Montreal to do my master's in 2014 at the University of Montreal. And the person that I was dating, he's from Quebec, and so the plan was after I finished my master's, we would get married and he would sponsor me. And it turns out that I could have gone to PAMI for information about sponsorship or about what my other options were to be a postgraduate and apply for permanent residency in that way. And PAMI, it turns out, was 5 minutes away from the University of Montreal, and I had no idea. So my mother-in-law and I, after we got married, we spent hours and hours on the phone with Immigration Canada, Immigration Quebec, everybody, trying to find out, what does this question mean? What does that question mean? When am I supposed to pay this? How does this work? Well, I could have gone to PAMI and just asked questions about what, and had I gone with a postgraduate option, I could have gotten information and lots of accompaniment for that, and so I'm just one example of somebody who wishes she knew that PAMI's services existed, because they're free, they're government, like they're sponsored by the government and everything, in part. So I'll explain all of that. But I guess I hope that I can help others avoid all of the suffering that we went through on the phone and everything. And even when I was living in Delhi, I actually went to the consulate, the Canadian consulate, like 3 times and waited there and tried to ask my questions, and I could have contacted PAMI and found out more about what was going on. So that's what I wanted to share with you a little bit. So if you'll open up your, and I'll just say, if you have questions as we're going, feel free to just raise your hand and we'll talk about it right then, or you can wait till the end. It's up to you, okay? So yeah, I'll invite you guys to open your packages, and we'll go through our services together, and I'll hit on a few other things as we go through, but this will be our guide. Our first card is this blue card, and it's kind of a general card that just says what our general mission is, and on the back it has a list of our 8 services that we'll be talking about. Every card has our phone number at the bottom and our website. And we're pretty proud of our website. It's newly updated, it's bilingual, and it's got information like our calendar of activities, and it's very up to date and dynamic and colorful. And you can also, we just last week launched an appointment making service online, which I don't think many other organizations have. So we're really excited to get that started to facilitate making appointments and having people involved. So this card, this green card, is our it's our settlement and integration service. And our settlement and integration service is sponsored by the Ministry of Immigration and Diversity. So it is government supported, and it's provincially focused. So if you're looking for information about going to Ontario, we're not going to be able to give you that much help. But if you're looking for any kind of information or support or accompaniment about figuring out access to services in Quebec, figuring out paperwork about becoming a permanent resident, about becoming a citizen, information about sponsorship, this is where you're going to go. So what I like to say is people come and sit with one of our expert counselors, and our counselor is going to listen to what your situation is, and they're going to say, okay, great, I like what you've been telling me. Did you know that based on your situation, you have access to X, Y, and Z services from the government, child benefits or tax credits or something like that? And here's the paperwork that you need to fill out to do it, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about that paperwork for free. So what I like to tell people is, instead of going and paying a lawyer thousands of dollars to get answers to a few questions, come to us, send your friends to us, because it's free and it's designed for you by us, and we can normally take care of those answers and help you with the paperwork and everything before you have to go and pay a whole bunch to a lawyer. This service is also great because they hold workshops with various entities and services around Montreal. So we've had, for instance, the police services of Montreal came in, and we actually have 2 police officers that'll come in. You can meet them and find out what can the police do for you. I know from personal experience, in India, the police are not necessarily always on the side of justice, and whereas, as you all know, here in Canada, the situation is different. But somebody who's just arrived might not have that same instinct. We've also had Miss Sack come in and talk about what is the process like of getting your driver's license and what is it like to drive in Montreal. Also, a lot of differences between driving in India and driving in Montreal, for instance. We've had workshops on fraud prevention. We've had workshops on housing rights. So all kinds of things that newcomers, myself included, can benefit from understanding about this society and maximizing what I can do to participate here in Montreal. So we also have a free tax clinic coming up as well, so something else to know about. Our next service is this turquoise card. Turquoise is my favorite color, so I particularly like this card. But it's our free French courses. We offer free part-time French courses at our location, which I should have mentioned is on Côte des Neiges, Côte Sainte-Catherine, between the Jewish General Hospital and St. Justine Hospital. So right by the 165, if we got on the 165 from here, we'd be there in 20 minutes. And we're like an 8-minute walk from Côte des Neiges metro station. So anyway, back to our French services, our French courses. They're part-time. You can do between, I think, 9 to 12 hours a week. And we have morning, afternoon, and evening. And we're one of the only organizations that offers summer courses, which is convenient for certain people. And these courses are supported by, again, the Ministry of Immigration and Diversity. And so they're free. And they're aimed at people who have a CSQ or higher. So many of us in here know the difference between CAQ and CSQ. So unfortunately, students tend to have a CAQ and temporary workers tend to have a CAQ. And right now, this is not available for people who have CAQs, but rather people who have CSQs, permanent residency, or naturalized citizenship. So something to keep in mind, but still we're proud of how many people that we can serve. It's not a, yeah. Yes.
Can the students here, the students and the workers who don't have a CSQ or a permanent residency here, they can move to the French schools?
No, that's what I was just saying. It's because it's supported. We would love to give those services to everybody, but because this is specifically funded by the Ministry of Immigration, we have to follow what they mandate us to do, and people who have a CAQ right now are not eligible for these French courses.
Okay, only people with the CSQ, they can go. Right?
CSQ, permanent residency, and naturalized citizenship, and asylum seekers. Okay. Those are the statuses. But if you have a question about, hey, my friend or me, or we're looking and you don't know, just call. The best would be to call to say this is what my immigration status is, and the person who runs that service will be able to answer very precisely if you're eligible. So thanks for asking. The last thing I'll say about this is that we run in sessions. It's not you walk in and you can start taking courses the next day. I believe the next course session starts April 1st, and then the next course session after that will start sometime in June. So it's not a walk in and hey, let's go. It's a sign up for the 8-week course. But that way it's structured. You're with the same people, the same teacher, and following a curriculum. So, any other questions? All right. Our next service, this blue card, is our employment assistance service.
Yes? I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So for people who are with CAQ,
yeah,
there's quite a big population over here.
Yes.
So maybe it's out of the scope of promise, but do you have any thoughts on that, like how they can be helped on the French issue?
So
that's a serious issue right now.
Right. The question for people online was how can CAQ holders benefit from French courses in Montreal, and do I have personal opinions? I do have personal opinions about that. I would love for all students and all temporary workers to be able to have access to those courses, and that's something we would like to be transmitting that message to the ministry, of course, but that's not something that's in our control right now. There are resources in Montreal for CAQ holders. They're just not often free. And that's the biggest issue. So many students that I met at Concordia who are itching to take courses will go to the Concordia French Studies department, and they have ways to take courses, but again, they're not free. I know the School Board of Montreal offers French courses. Unfortunately, they're not free. The things that I've come across that are free French courses or free French support tend to be conversation groups, which is better than nothing. I mean, at least you're getting exposed. And what I tell students in particular, because I work with Concordia students a lot, what I tell them is that in order to get your CSQ at the end of your studies, the most important thing you can do is get that French down to, I think it's a B2 level. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of money most likely, or figuring out an online resource, and then taking a test, but it's really one of the best things that somebody can do to get their CSQ at the end of their studies. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does, thank you.
It's not the most.
No, because for students, it's a good investment in a new language, especially if you're trying to live in Montreal in the future.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people don't realize, especially people coming from India, already speak 2, 3, 4 languages. Yes, French is very different, but man, you know languages already. You know about how to learn languages. I think once you've learned a few languages, adding another one is you're in a good place to start. So it's just finding the time and finding the money to be able to do it. I know that's the challenge, but it's really important to prioritize that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. So back to this blue card, employment assistance. This is a program that's sponsored by Emploi Québec, and so again, the provincial government is funding that, and it's aimed at permanent residents and naturalized citizens. Although, if somebody walks in our door and we can support them right then, we won't turn them away. It just might not be as extensive long-term help as we can give to permanent residents and naturalized citizens. So I'll tell you basically what happens. Our experts in kind of Quebec employment will help you tweak your CV to make sure that it's appropriate for a Quebec context, and maybe help you with like English and French versions of your CV. They'll also help you with interview preparation, but the most important thing, in my opinion, that this service does is to help you create a plan that's right for you to get a job in Montreal. So if you arrive here thinking, I've been a dentist in my home country for years and I want to be a dentist in Montreal, well, let's talk about that. What is the reality of becoming a dentist in Montreal as a newly arrived person? Are you going to have to add studies? Is there a professional order? Is it going to take years and years to pass tests? And if that's not something that you want to do because you want to start working right away, well, what are other options that might be of interest to you? And what can you do to get to a place that's good for you? That might not be exactly what you had in mind, because what you had in mind is going to be too long and too much effort. And so developing that plan together and helping you understand what the tools are available to you in Montreal and in Quebec is something that I think that is the most important aspect of this service. Another thing that the service does is they'll bring in, for instance, a big employer like Deloitte and have a day about what is the employment, the hiring process look like from the employer's perspective, which I think is a really valuable thing to do as well. So that's our employment service, and that's focused on the Montreal area. If you go to this red card, our assistance in relocating to the Quebec regions, this is a provincially focused employment service that we have as well. And it's also funded by Emploi Québec. So it's focused on permanent residents and naturalized citizens, but there's also a possibility that asylum seekers could benefit from this service as well. Basically, we have partners all over the province of Quebec that will help with finding a job, but also your general integration into a region, which is different than integrating into Montreal. Figuring out where do you do your shopping, where do you do your, how do you get your housing figured out, how do you get your kids signed up for school. Most people who utilize this service probably would benefit from having a strong base in French. we're exploring avenues in the eastern townships and in around Ottawa, well, in Gatineau, for people who have not that much French yet to use this service. That's not super developed, but we're trying to figure out how that can go further. So also, if you end up going through this service, you can have, to find your job, you can have a particularly interesting amount of reimbursement of funding for your move and for your resettlement outside of Montreal, coming from Emploi Quebec. So we have people from the regions that come and talk about that region all the time, about what the industry is like, about what the culture might be like out there. And we also have what's called séjours exploratoires, so exploratory visits where you can go for free out to the region and find out, is this a place that would be of interest to me? So our next card is this green card, our school support service. And I'll just briefly talk about this because it's really concentrated in the Côte des Neiges area. We partner with a number of elementary schools and high schools to teachers from those schools refer us students who are struggling in French and in math. And those students are paired at Commis with a tutor that stays with them for the whole year and meets with them either after school, depending on the age, or on Saturdays. And the teacher and the tutor will exchange information and updates about that student's progress throughout the year. Again, it's on a referral basis, so it's not open to everybody, but at the same time, if you know somebody who has a struggling student in a Côte des Neiges school, that student might be eligible to be referred to us. So it's a really successful program and we're really proud of it, and I wish everybody in the world could have access to it, but right now it's a referral-based service in Côte des Neiges. Yes?
What schools do you have?
I can email you that. I can list, I know École La Voix is one of them, but if you want, I can email the list of schools to the group or to Mr. Chakraborty and he can forward or something like that. So, good question. It was the question was which schools in Côte des Neiges were eligible. So I'll get back to you on that. Our next service is this pink card, the Family Assistance Service. So basically, the person who is in charge of this has a social work background, and she will sit and meet with the family and kind of go deeper than our initial settlement and integration service will. If that family is struggling with any kind of family problem, whether that be spousal abuse or somebody's health is failing, whether that's mental or physical health, or they need furniture, or they need clothing for the winter, or anything like that, this is where somebody can come to receive support that is appropriate for a newcomer. Because we know that maybe going straight into the CLSC might not be culturally sensitive or things like that. So coming to us for this can be a way to have an individualized, personalized approach. We also, this service has a group of volunteers that are all trained in doing individual accompaniment. So if, for instance, your child has parent-teacher conferences and the teacher speaks a different language than you, or you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen, then one of those volunteers can go with you to that and help you feel more comfortable with what's going on. So for families that are enrolled in this family assistance service, the person who is the organizer, she organizes outings for families to help them understand what is it like to be a family in Montreal. So outings to the planetarium or the biodome or the museum or hiking on the mountain or apple picking, just a moment where newcomer families can meet each other and find out what do you do in Montreal when you have kids and you want to discover more about how family friendly Montreal is. So our next service is this yellow card, our community food action card, and this is really one of my favorite services. It's not an emergency food program, so if you're really like, we're completely broke and I don't know what to do and I need food right now, there are places that we will refer you to go for that. But in terms of figuring out how to develop a plan to get food and to make sure that you know where to get food that's affordable and where to get food that's healthy, this is where you want to go. So there's 3 different parts to this service. The first is that the organizer gives nutrition workshops with a nutritionist from the CLSC for newcomers to help people understand, for instance, how do I make a lunch for my child that is healthy and affordable? Or how do we eat healthy and affordably in the winter? Or how do I read a nutrition label from Canada? So I've sat in on a number of these, and every time I come out knowing more about how I can be shopping more smartly and making sure that I'm getting all the right nutrients, because things are different than where I'm from. Every time that we have one of these workshops, the whole group will go down to our kitchen that's in the basement and do kind of a tasting together or cook together and spend time together. So another thing that this service offers is in the summer we have a community garden. And it's just outside the front door of our building, and we have a community gardener that comes and teaches people about urban gardening, and it's a great moment for families to spend time outside of the house and with the earth and with each other. The last thing that we have is our community organizer has a group buying situation where people come together, they pool their money and buy fruits and vegetables in bulk. And those are delivered every 2 weeks to Plummy. And basically, because the fruit and vegetables are bought in bulk, you end up saving 30% on your grocery bill. And they're locally grown, so you're supporting a sustainable nonprofit organization and farmers from around here and eating seasonally, and overall it's a great program. I think the boxes end up being, you can do a $8 box, a $12 box, and a $16 box. So if you live in the Côte Neige area, it's a really interesting option to get your fruits and vegetables from that instead of going to the grocery store and buying things imported from Morocco or from, I don't know, Chile. I mean, those are good too, but so. And our last service is our Maria Goretti Guest House. And so this is on the 5 floors above our offices. We have 220 individual rooms for women only, sorry men, but maybe you know of women who could benefit from this service. We have a lot of international students. We have a lot of young professionals. They can be from Quebec, from Canada, from other countries. So we've got a nice mix of people. But the criteria is 18 years and older and single. No children, no husbands. It ends up being like a residence in Delhi. I know a lot of my friends live. What is the word I'm looking for?
Hostel.
A hostel, yeah, yes. In India, I would call it a hostel. So a place that's 24 hours security, and is clean, and it's only women allowed on those floors. So something to know about for sure as a resource for women. And if you stay there for 3 months or longer, it comes down to about $400 per month, which relative to other places is very affordable. And you end up with a bed, a sink, a refrigerator, and heating, and then shared bathroom and shared kitchen. We also have a hotel type of cost, which is $50 a night. So if you come and just stay for a week, you would pay $50 for each night that you're there, and that's on booking.com. So yeah, those are our services, and I guess I'd love to hear any questions that you have or any ideas that you have, and I'm gonna just take down notes about what I hear from you. Yes, sir.
The hotel also for women?
The hotel is also specifically for women because it's 20 or so of the rooms up there, so men are not allowed on those floors. So.
So I have a
Yes,
point,
sir.
like
as I understand, you saying that you have a lot of tribes and immigrations,
A lot of what?
tribes for people who have already their CSQs or are permanent residents. And I'll go back to some of the points which you said you raised. But what about the people who are stuck and survival is a question for them. Surviving and staying in Canada is a question for them based on their status. Like they don't have their CSQ, they are not permanent resident, forget about police. So what are some of the tribes that your organization have taken place or have right now in place, or in future you're going to bring something which these people are not aware of, because right now they have access to internet, so they can find out what are their options, but are there some of the options which we are not aware of which your organization can throw some light on?
So the question, if I got it right, was what are some of the services that we can provide to people who don't fit perfectly into the CSQ, permanent resident, naturalized citizenship category? Because people have access to internet, they can inform themselves what does it mean to come to PUMI. So I guess I'll say, first of all, from experience, having somebody face to face can make a huge difference. I've spent hours combing through Immigration Canada's websites to find answers to things, or through Immigration Quebec to find answers to things, and that can be frustrating or lead to dead ends. So sometimes it's just nice to be able to ask your question to somebody who might know more about what is going on. However, if somebody comes in and they have a CAQ and they don't know how to get from a CAQ to a CSQ, they can talk to somebody about what does that plan need to look like. What do I need to do in order to make myself eligible for a CSQ? And maybe the answer is as simple as focus on your French. Because I'm looking at this grid of requirements for CSQ, and you've got, I don't know what the required is right now, but let's say you need 40 points. Well, I see you've got 36 points, and if you had the right level of French, you'd be over the point thing and you would be accepted. And so sometimes just talking to somebody face to face instead of waiting for hours on the phone or looking through a website can make a big difference in somebody feeling empowered to make decisions about their immigration situation or integration situation. And then all of our workshops, every single one of them are open to people of all statuses. So, for instance, the other night we held something on last will and testament, and we had people who were waiting for their refugee acceptance trials. But they're absolutely eligible to come and ask all the questions they want about what the process of last will and testament is like. Our community food action service is completely open to everybody of all statuses. Our family assistance service is completely open to everybody of all statuses. And like I said, even our settlement and integration, our employment services, we won't necessarily be able to provide weeks and weeks and weeks of accompaniment like we would with a permanent resident or a naturalized citizen. But if you need help filling out something for your temporary employment permit, well, we can figure out how to help you right then when you walk in, or refer you to an organization that we trust that can help you. Or we also have relationships with lawyers who are trustworthy, who aren't going to spend hours and hours and then hand you a huge bill and say this is what you owe. So if we can't help because our resources are limited by what the government tells us to do, we're going to refer you to somewhere that's going to take care of you. So I hope that answers your question. Of course, I would like to say we help everybody all the way. Resources are limited, and so we help those that we're mandated to, and we try to go above and beyond that as much as possible. So, thank you for the great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so does Promise provide any translation services like English to French?
Does POMI provide translation services